Okay, hello everyone, good afternoon or good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm really delighted to be here today to talk on WIC Talks. The subject of my 10 minutes is why we need to redefine what is foreign direct investment and investment promotion. So if we look at the traditional definition of foreign direct investment as defined by OECD and IMF, is basically any foreign investment in a country where more than 10% of the entity is owned by a foreign investor. That's the official definition. And that's worked really well for investment promotion agencies for many decades, because investment promotion agencies have primarily focused on greenfield foreign direct investment, in particular, wholly owned investment, whether that's getting Toyota to establish a manufacturing plant or attracting a BPO center, greenfield investments, which is most of those investments would meet the traditional definition or the official definition of foreign direct investment. Why have IPAs focused on this? I mean, the answer we all know, because greenfield investment immediately adds to the productive capacity of the economy. It immediately creates both direct and indirect jobs. It can contribute to industry development, to export development. So it's been critical for countries all around the world to establish IPAs, and also at the subnational level as well. And if we look at IPAs, the services they offer investors have all been geared towards attracting greenfield investment. So helping companies with site visits, making brochures to promote particular sectors, helping them get incentives for their projects, as was just mentioned by the previous speaker. And at the same time, IPAs, when they're setting their targets, when they're measuring their impact, it's all around greenfield investment. How many projects have we attracted? How many jobs have we created? And how much capital investment did we secure? And if you look at most IPAs in the world, that's the metrics which they're using. Now, this is all great, but my view is that this traditional model of economic development and greenfield FDI attraction is changing now, and we need to redefine what we mean by FDI and investment promotion. Why is it changing? It's changing because approaches to economic development and how companies actually expand overseas are changing due to structural changes in the global economy. So I'm going to talk about some of the major structural changes we see taking place and how that's impacting FDI and investment promotion. So first of all, the rapid growth of technology and digitalization across industries. This has led to the software and IT sector being by far the biggest source of greenfield foreign direct investment projects globally. It's also led to a global technology skills shortage, which is becoming worse and worse. So economic development objectives are therefore shifted in many places around the world to prioritize technological development and R&D. And as a result of this focus on technology and R&D, IPAs are having to reevaluate their mandate. So one of the key trends we've seen probably for at least 10 years now is that IPAs around the world are trying to attract startup FDI. This is attracting foreign entrepreneurs to establish their technology startups in their particular country or region. Now, this startup FDI trend was pioneered by Chile with Startup Chile, which has been extremely successful. I think at least maybe 1,500 foreign startups or startups by foreign entrepreneurs have been established in Chile. And then the success of this program and the focus on technology development around the world has led to this approach being kind of, I won't say copied, but being rolled out to other countries, whether that's from Hong Kong to Canada to least developed countries like Rwanda have all developed these kind of programs. Even I see some colleagues here from Cyprus who also have a very attractive program for technology entrepreneurs. Now this is really attractive, from an economic development point of view, because it can fast track your startup ecosystem. And that's kind of, for example, why Chile was the pioneer. They were incredibly successful, fast-growing economy, but driven more by natural resources. The R&D expenditure was rather low, so they wanted to bring in the technology into the country and get people to set up businesses. And it can help increase the R&D spending in the country. However, IPAs around the world which are targeting startup FDI. This is not FDI, actually. There's no FDI taking place. What you're doing is targeting new business formation through talent attraction. So we can already see that IPAs around the world have really shifted in terms of this strict focus on FDI towards other types of attracting other types of business formation which can increase economic development. Also, much of the investment into the digital and R&D economy is not actually greenfield investment. It's driven by mergers and acquisitions, which is true in most technology and R&D intensive sectors, and partnerships between companies, technology license agreements and so on. I think probably the most famous example right now is the technology licensing agreement between WAVTEQ, which developed the COVID vaccine, and Pfizer. That's probably the most successful technology agreement in history, creating tens of billions of dollars of value added for each company and for the countries they're located in. And also venture capital, which is driving technology development around the world. And now if we look at the leading IPAs in the world, a survey we did this year showed that more than half of those IPAs will now support mergers and acquisitions of their local companies. This would have been extremely hard to imagine a decade ago that a government or non-governmental organization would actually be actively supporting M&A into its country. Also, many IPAs now are looking at how they can support local technology startups through attracting foreign venture capital to invest in those startups. Again, this is a very different approach to attracting greenfield FDI and requires different skills and capabilities. This focus on talent attraction has transformed due to the pandemic. The pandemic accelerated not only the growth of technology, but also the shift to remote working and how companies can hire talent easily now, more or less anywhere in the world. Now, this raises really interesting questions for economic development and FDI attraction. Remote working means, in theory, that a company no longer needs to have a single huge office where it attracts all the workers from around the world or around the country to go to that office. They can have a smaller network of WeWork type offices around the world and employ people wherever they are in the country or wherever they are in the world. So it's a very, very different model. It means from an economic development perspective that high quality jobs can be created anywhere. If you're a poorer country or a peripheral country, if you're a rural region within a country, rather than having the typical brain drain, which we see so much in technology sectors, you spend all the government money to create an education for computer scientists, and then 80% leave the region or leave the country. They go to Silicon Valley or London or Berlin. Now companies can hire the talent in the region, no matter where it is in the world. So this can really help the economic development of poorer and rural regions. But it also means the investor may not even have to invest. They may not even have a company in your country, but they're still employing people. And it's interesting, if you look at LinkedIn, you look at companies, I looked at recently at SpaceX, and you look at SpaceX where they're employing people on LinkedIn, and you see the workforce. In many of the countries where they have people, they do not have a company there, but they're still employing people. These will be extremely good, high-quality jobs in one of the world's leading technology companies. So this is the reality now of the new world of business. And so this also raises questions as an IPA, as a government. Should you give incentives to those companies? If the company is not even establishing an operation, a subsidiary in your country or your region, but they're creating lots of high-quality jobs, do they still get incentives? It's a really challenging question, what to do in these situations. Because the company may not be even paying any corporate taxes at all if they're not even in the country. It also means if we look at IPAs today, they're beginning to resemble a recruitment agency. And I'm not really joking. They are. Many IPAs now are beginning to look like recruitment agencies. They're building talent databases, which investors can access so they can find the talent wherever they are in the country or in the region. And we see this both at the country level and at the subnational level. And to attract talent to the country or to the region, IPAs are becoming talent attraction agencies as well. And we see that around the world, many national IPAs and many subnational IPAs have talent attraction programs now. This also means that governments need to transform their immigration policies to make it easier to invest. Again, the previous speaker before me from Poland was talking about how they're making it much easier for talent to move to Poland and set up businesses and work for technology companies. This is what's happening all around the world. So if we look at the IPA today, I think many IPAs would be quite unrecognizable from a decade ago in terms of their mandate and in terms of their services. And we need to redefine, what the role and mandate of an IPA is, because it's no longer just strictly FDI attraction. Finally, the other major structural change is to focus on sustainability and climate change mitigation. If we look at the value of capital investment, of foreign direct investment projects around the world, renewable energy is now the biggest sector. WAVTEQ, we're forecasting by 2025 more than $120 billion of renewable energy FDI projects in 2025. So this is now the dominant sector for greenfield foreign direct investment. However, how companies expand into sustainable investment sectors is often quite different to your typical greenfield manufacturing and services investments. If we look at renewable energy, what determines if a company sets up their solar farm, their wind farm, their green hydrogen facility? They're typically looking for investable projects. The IPAs need to offer investment projects ready to offer, or what we might call IPROs, to investors. These need to be well-packaged project opportunities, with the business plan, the government tenders, the regulatory framework in place, the sites ready for investors. And that's kind of what drives investment in these, in renewable energy in particular. And especially if we look at maybe least developed countries where maybe the return on investment is lower and the risk is higher, it also requires often international financing, requirements as well. So you need to bring together the investors and the financiers. Therefore, IPA's role is really changing when we talk about sustainable investment. It's about packaging and promoting these investable projects for investors, getting feedback from foreign investors, providing policy advocacy to the government so that the regulatory framework is attractive enough for investors, that the government tenders are designed in the right way, targeting foreign investors to bid for these projects. And often, or increasingly, what we're seeing is that IPAs are also getting involved with institutional financial investors, trying to target institutional investors to invest in projects. So that's kind of blurring the line now between foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. And if we look at other types of sustainable investment, if you're a location, for example, you want to shift to organic farming or sustainable fisheries. As an IPA, what kind of investment are we looking at here? Generally, that is not greenfield investment, because you have all your local companies and existing investors doing the farming, they're doing the fishery. But what they need is technology transfer. To be able to move to organic or sustainable fisheries, they need to have the international certification so they can sell their products internationally at high value. So what you're talking about now is more like partnerships and agreements between companies, not greenfield investment. So just to conclude, the raison d'etre of IPAs is economic development, encouraging economic development in your countries and regions, not increasing FDI flows. And the value added of IPAs, the value added, I think, of all IPAs is your local knowledge of how to invest, your local knowledge of the ecosystem in your country or region, and your ability to actually influence policy through policy advocacy. At the same time, this local knowledge is in combination of your knowledge of foreign markets. IPAs are working with foreign investors, that's the job. You're targeting foreign investors and building relationships with foreign investors every single day. So this is the kind of the reason for IPAs is economic development, and the capabilities is your local knowledge and your knowledge of foreign investors. And these capabilities, as we've seen, as I've tried to explain, are being leveraged now, not only to attract greenfield FDI, and that remains extremely important for economic development, but to attract many other types of foreign investment which can contribute to economic development, as well as to attract talent, to your locations as well. Therefore, I think that we need to redefine the traditional role of IPAs in FDI. Thank you.